I was pouring my morning coffee when Brad's name flashed on my phone. My daughter Sarah's husband had always been entitled, but his words that morning crossed every line. "Pack your bags, old man. We're taking over your beach house. 17 of us arriving in 40 minutes. He didn't ask. He commanded. After 30 years of building my fortune in silence after watching him disrespect my daughter and drain her savings, I finally had my moment. This time Brad had pushed too far. The morning sun filtered through my kitchen window as I set down my phone, Brad's words still echoing in my mind. To understand how we got here, I need to take you back 5 years to when Bradley Morrison first entered our lives. Sarah was 30, then working as a senior associate at Patterson and Associates, one of Los Angeles's most prestigious law firms. She'd inherited her mother's brilliant mind and determination, graduating from Stanford Law with honors. I couldn't have been prouder of my only child. Perhaps that pride blinded me to what was coming. Brad swept into her life like a California wildfire. He was everything Sarah thought she wanted: tall, conventionally handsome, with that easy charm that made people trust him instantly. They met when his startup needed legal representation. Within 6 months, they were married in a lavish ceremony that Brad insisted on, despite Sarah's preference for something simple. I'm Devin, by the way, 68-years-old widower for 7 years now. I spent 3 decades as an aerospace engineer developing navigation systems that are probably in the phone you're holding right now. When I sold my patents to a major tech company, I walked away with more money than I'd ever dreamed of. But I kept living in the same 4-bedroom house in Pasadena, driving the same Toyota Camry, shopping at the same grocery store. Wealth, I learned, is best kept quiet. My sister Martha understood this. At 71, she'd recently retired as a Superior Court judge after 35 years on the bench. She was the only person who knew the true extent of my finances, and she'd warned me about Brad from day one. "There's something calculated about that boy," she'd said at the wedding reception, watching Brad work the room like a politician. "Look how he counts the expensive gifts." I should have listened more carefully. The first year seemed fine. Brad talked big about his luxury car rental business, how he was going to revolutionize the industry with an app that would be Uber for Lamborghinis. Sarah believed in him even when the venture capitalists didn't. When Brad needed $70,000 to bridge funding gaps, Sarah emptied her savings without telling me. The business collapsed within 8 months. Brad blamed the economy competitors' unfair regulations, everyone but himself. Sarah, exhausted from billing 80-hour weeks at the firm, didn't have energy to argue. She just absorbed his failure like she would absorb so many others. I started noticing things during their visits. Brad would wander through my house opening drawers, studying my mail, when he thought I wasn't looking. He'd make jokes about my boring lifestyle, dropping hints about how I should be enjoying my money more. "You can't take it with you, Pops," he'd say with that salesman's grin. The turning point came 6 months ago during Thanksgiving dinner. I'd made the mistake of leaving my study door open, and Brad discovered some financial documents on my desk. Nothing too revealing, just quarterly statements from one of my smaller investment accounts. But it was enough to make his eyes gleam with a hunger I'd seen before in desperate men. That night after they'd left, I found something that changed everything. While cleaning up, I discovered a small device behind a picture frame in the living room, then another under the coffee table. Recording devices. Cheap ones from an online retailer, but effective enough. I didn't confront him. Instead, I drove to an electronics store the next morning and bought my own equipment. If Brad wanted to play games, I'd show him how an engineer plays them. I installed my own cameras and recording devices, hidden far better than his amateur attempts. Then I hired a private investigator named Marcus, a former LAPD detective, who came highly recommended by Martha's contacts. Within 2 weeks, Marcus had uncovered a goldmine of information. Brad wasn't just a failed entrepreneur, he was a serial failure with a pattern. 3 previous businesses, all funded by other people's money, all collapsed within a year. A trail of lawsuits and bitter investors, and most damning a current affair with Emma Richardson, the wife of his latest business partner. But what truly made my blood run cold was the recording I captured in my own home. Brad on the phone with someone named Vincent discussing my deteriorating mental state and how they could use it to gain control of my assets. The old man showing clear signs of dementia. Brad said, feet up on my coffee table. Yesterday he couldn't remember where he put his keys. Sarah's already worried about him living alone. Few more incidents we get power of attorney, and then we're set. The keys he mentioned, I'd left them in my car's ignition while bringing in groceries. An honest mistake anyone could make. But Brad was building a case documenting every minor slip, every forgotten detail, constructing a narrative of decline where none existed. I sat in my study that night, listening to the recording, feeling a cold rage I hadn't experienced since my Mary's death. This parasite wasn't just after my money. He was trying to steal my dignity, my autonomy, my relationship with my daughter. And he was using my Sarah to do it. Marcus's next report revealed Brad had been meeting with a lawyer named Gerald Hoffman, a bottom feeder known for elder abuse cases and contested inheritances. They'd been discussing strategies for proving incompetence, how long it typically took, what kind of documentation judges found most compelling. I made copies of everything. Every recording, every photograph, every document. I opened a safety deposit box at a bank where I had no other accounts and stored it all there. Then I started planning my counterstrike. You see, Brad had made a crucial error. He assumed that because I lived modestly, because I didn't flash my wealth, because I sometimes forgot small things like anyone my age might, that I was weak. He thought kindness was vulnerability. He believed quiet meant powerless. He was about to learn why I'd succeeded in aerospace engineering, a field where one miscalculation could send millions of dollars of equipment burning up in the atmosphere. Patience and precision. Those were my tools. And I'd been patient long enough. Winter in Southern California still surprises me sometimes. That January morning was crisp and clear, the kind of day that makes you grateful to live here. I was meeting with my accountant, Robert, but my mind was elsewhere, formulating plans within plans. Robert had been managing my finances for 20 years. He was one of the few who understood the full scope of my portfolio. When I told him I wanted to purchase a beachfront property, his eyebrows rose slightly. Thinking of finally enjoying some of that wealth, Devon, he asked, fingers already dancing across his calculator. Something like that. I replied, though enjoyment was the furthest thing from my mind. This was about strategy. The property hunt began quietly. I worked with Amanda Chen, a discreet real estate agent who specialized in high-end properties and understood the value of confidentiality. I specifically requested she use a shell company for all inquiries and documentation. Seabreeze Holdings LLC was born registered in Delaware with Martha as the listed director. We viewed 7 properties over 2 weeks. Each morning I'd tell Sarah I was going to my cardiac rehabilitation class, a lie that pained me but was necessary. She'd been increasingly worried about my health lately, concerns no doubt fueled by Brad's constant subtle suggestions about my decline. The winning property revealed itself on a foggy Tuesday morning in Malibu. 2,700 square feet of modern architecture, perched on a bluff, with 180-degree ocean views and private beach access. The price tag read $2.5 million, though Amanda assured me we could negotiate. What sold me wasn't the infinity pool or the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was the security features. The previous owner had been a Hollywood producer with stalker problems. The property came equipped with military-grade surveillance systems, electronic gates, and a safe room. Perfect for my purposes. But I needed modifications. Through Martha's connections, I found Thomas Wright, a security consultant, who designed systems for federal judges. We walked the property together, and I outlined my unusual requirements. I need remote access to everything, Tori, I explained. Cameras, door locks, gates, even the utility controls, and I need it all hidden. Thomas studied me with the calculating look of a man who'd seen plenty of unusual requests. Divorce situation. Fornsorum. Family security matter. I replied, which was true enough. The modifications took 6 weeks and cost an additional $150,000. Hidden cameras in every room, electronic locks that could be controlled from my phone motion sensors, audio recording equipment built into the walls. The control hub was disguised as a utility closet, accessible only with biometric scanning. During this time, Brad's behavior escalated. Marcus reported he'd increased his meetings with the lawyer Hoffman. They'd drafted preliminary paperwork for a competency hearing. Brad was also spreading stories among his circle about my concerning behavior, laying groundwork for his eventual move. Sarah, meanwhile, was drowning. The stress showed in the dark circles under her eyes, the way she'd lost 15 pounds she couldn't afford to lose. She'd mentioned during our weekly lunches that money was tight, but when I offered to help, she'd refused with a forced smile. Brad's new venture is about to turn the corner, she'd said, not meeting my eyes. He's got investors lined up. Marcus discovered the truth. Brad had opened 4 credit cards in Sarah's name, maxing them out on poker games, expensive dinners with Emma, and maintaining his image of success. The debt totaled over $200,000. Sarah, buried in her work, trusting her husband, had no idea. I photographed every piece of evidence Marcus provided, building my own file parallel to the one in the safety deposit box. The private investigator had also uncovered something interesting about Brad's poker games. They weren't friendly neighborhood gatherings. Brad was running high-stakes games with some genuinely dangerous people taking a house cut that skirted the edge of legality. One name kept appearing in these reports, Tony Castellano, a man with connections to organized crime in Las Vegas. Brad owed him $40,000 and had been making promises about coming into family money soon. The beach house purchase closed on a Friday in March. I signed the papers as CEO of Seabreeze Holdings, keeping my name off all public records. That night, I stood in my new living room watching the sun set over the Pacific, planning my next moves. The house needed furnishing, but I kept it minimal. This wasn't going to be a home. It was going to be a stage for Brad's downfall. Every room was set up to maximize the camera angles to capture whatever was coming from multiple perspectives. I hired a property management company to maintain the grounds and keep up appearances. To the neighbors, it would look like another corporate beach rental sitting empty between bookings. I met only one neighbor personally, Tom Harrison, the house to the north. When he introduced himself as retired FBI, I filed that information away for potential future use. Throughout all of this, I maintained my routine. Breakfast at 7, coffee and newspaper, grocery shopping on Wednesdays, lunch with Sarah on Thursdays, dinner with Martha every Sunday. To anyone watching, and I knew Brad was watching, I was a predictable old man set in his ways, ripe for manipulation. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Brad plotted to prove my incompetence, I was orchestrating a complex real estate transaction, managing a multi-layered security installation, and coordinating with a team of professionals. If anything, my mind had never been sharper. Anger, I'd discovered, was an excellent focusing agent. One evening, while reviewing security footage from my home cameras, I caught Brad in my study again. He was photographing documents, careful to return everything to its exact position. But there was something new in his movements, a confidence that worried me. He'd found something he liked. I checked my desk. The property tax statement for my Pasadena home was slightly out of alignment. Brad now knew the house was worth $1.2 million, far more than its modest appearance suggested. Another piece of ammunition for his case that I was sitting on wealth I was too senile to properly manage. That night I called Martha. It's accelerating, I told her. He's going to make his move soon. Then maybe it's time to bait the hook, she suggested. Give him something he can't resist. She was right. I'd been playing defense long enough. Time to let Brad think he was winning. Time to mention my new purchase at Sunday dinner casual as could be, and watch the greed bloom in his eyes like algae in still water. The security system at the beach house went fully operational that weekend. Thomas gave me a tutorial on the control app, showing me how to monitor and control everything from my phone. I could lock every door seal, the gates, even control the lights and temperature. The cameras provided crystal clear HD footage, all backed up to secure cloud storage. This is military-grade equipment, Thomas reminded me. Whatever you're protecting against, you're ready. Sui, if only he knew I wasn't protecting against intruders. I was preparing to document the self-destruction of a man who'd mistaken restraint for weakness, who'd confused quiet living with vulnerability. Brad thought he was hunting a deer. He was about to discover he'd cornered a wolf. Sunday dinners at my house had been a tradition since Mary passed. Nothing fancy, just family gathering around the dining room table I'd built myself 30 years ago. Sarah always brought dessert, usually something from the French bakery near her office. Brad brought his appetite and his barely concealed impatience. That particular Sunday in late March started like any other. Sarah arrived first alone, apologizing that Brad was running late from a business meeting. She looked more exhausted than usual, and I noticed her credit cards were missing from her wallet when she paid for the dessert. "Dad, I'm worried about you," she said while helping me set the table. "Brad mentioned you've been forgetting things. Maybe we should look into getting you some help around the house." The words were Sarah's, but the script was pure Brad. I recognized his manipulation in the concerned tilt of her head, the practiced casualness of the suggestion. "I appreciate the concern, sweetheart," I replied, placing the roast on the table. "But I'm managing fine. In fact, I've been keeping quite busy lately." Before she could probe further, Brad arrived with Martha right behind him. My sister shot me a knowing look as Brad launched into a story about his latest sure-thing investment opportunity, something involving cryptocurrency and artificial intelligence that sounded like word salad designed to impress. We settled into dinner conversation flowing with the practiced ease of family gatherings. Brad dominated as usual, talking about his connections, his plans, the killing he was about to make in the market. Martha asked pointed questions that revealed the holes in his stories, but Brad was too self-absorbed to notice her cross-examination. It was during dessert, as Sarah served the tarte aux pommes, that I dropped my bomb. "I've been meaning to mention," I said, stirring cream into my coffee, "I bought a beach house." The silence was delicious. Sarah's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Martha hid her smile behind her napkin. Brad's eyes went wide, then narrow, calculating so fast I could almost hear the gears turning. "A beach house." Sarah set down her fork. "Dad, that's a big decision. When did this happen?" "Closed on Friday." I replied, keeping my tone conversational. "Beautiful place in Malibu, 2,700 square feet private beach access. Felt like it was time to enjoy life a little." Brad leaned forward, trying to mask his excitement with concern. "Devin, that's quite an investment. I hope you had someone look over the contracts. At your age, these real estate sharks can take advantage." Martha's laugh was sharp. "Brad, my brother was negotiating contracts when you were still in diapers. I think he can handle a property purchase." I watched Brad's jaw clench at the insult, but greed won over pride. "Of course, I just meant, how much did this set you back, if you don't mind me asking?" $2.5 million. I said, enjoying the way his pupils dilated. "Cash purchase. No sense in paying mortgage interest at my age." Sarah gasped. "Dad, I had no idea you had that kind of liquid capital. Your mother and I were careful savers." I said which was true, but hardly the whole story. "Plus those patents I sold have done well in the market." Brad was practically vibrating with excitement, his food forgotten. 2.5. Malibu. This is incredible. Pops. When can we see it? Soon enough, I said vaguely. Still getting it furnished and sorted out. The rest of dinner became Brad's monologue about beach houses, property values, investment potential. He pulled out his phone trying to find the listing online, frustrated when his searches came up empty. I enjoyed watching him struggle, knowing Seabreeze Holdings had kept the purchase completely private. Sarah tried several times to express concern about the expense, but Brad kept cutting her off, assuring her this was exactly what Devon needs and how rejuvenating beach air would be for my health. The hypocrisy was stunning from a man who'd been building a case for my mental incompetence just weeks before. After dessert, while the women were in the kitchen, Brad cornered me in the living room. This beach house, he said, lowering his voice conspiratorially, must be a prime property for that price in Malibu, ocean view. Panoramic. I confirmed. You can see Catalina Island on clear days. His eyes gleamed. You know Sarah and I have been stressed lately. A weekend at the beach would do us good. When were you thinking of having us over? All in good time, I said, patting his shoulder, with just enough condescension to make him bristle. Need to get everything perfect first. You know how particular Sarah is. That was a lie. Sarah was the least materialistic person I knew. But Brad nodded sagely, already spinning fantasies about his access to a Malibu mansion. Over the next 2 weeks, Brad's behavior shifted dramatically. The subtle suggestions about my declining mental state stopped. Instead, he became solicitous, calling to check if I needed help with anything, offering to drive me to appointments, asking about my health, with theatrical concern. Sarah noticed the change. Brad's really turned a corner, she told me during our Thursday lunch. He's been so thoughtful lately. He even suggested we start saving more, maybe pay down some credit cards. If only she knew those cards were already maxed out in her name. Brad's poker buddies started hearing about the beach house immediately. Marcus reported that Brad was bragging about his inheritance preview, telling everyone his father-in-law's new property was practically his. He'd already promised several people weekend stays, painting himself as the generous host of a Malibu paradise. One name kept coming up in these conversations, Tony Castellano. Brad owed him significant money, and the beach house stories were buying him time. My wife's old man just dropped $2.5 million on a beach pad, Marcus recorded Brad saying. Once we get access, I'll make you whole plus interest. Hell, we could run some real games there. Privacy, luxury, the works. The fool was planning to turn my strategic purchase into his personal casino. 3 weeks after the announcement, Brad's patience cracked. He showed up at my house unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon, catching me in the garden. Devon. His smile was too wide, too eager. Just thought I'd drop by, see how you're doing. Hey, I was thinking, why don't we drive out to that beach house? I could help you check on things, make sure the property management is doing their job. That's thoughtful, I said, continuing to prune my roses, but unnecessary. Everything's under control. His smile faltered. Come on, Pops. We're family. Sarah's dying to see it, and you know how busy her schedule is. We could surprise her, take some pictures. All in good time. I repeated my earlier phrase, knowing it would frustrate him. It did. His mask slipped for just a moment, showing the ugly impatience beneath. You can't just mention a $2.5 million beach house and then keep it secret. People will think you're hiding something. Or worse, that you made it up. There it was. The first attempt at manipulation, suggesting I might be fabricating things, showing signs of delusion. I set down my pruning shears and looked him straight in the eye. Brad, when I'm ready to show the house, you'll be the first to know. Until then, I'd appreciate your patience. He left angry, spinning his tires a bit as he pulled away. A petty gesture from a petty man. That night, I reviewed the security footage from my home cameras. After I'd gone inside, Brad had returned parking down the street. He'd walked around my property, peering in windows, checking if my car was gone. looking for opportunities. Martha called later that evening. "How long are you going to let him dangle?" "Not much longer," I admitted. "He's already making promises he can't keep. Soon he'll be desperate enough to do something truly stupid." "Just be careful," she warned. "Desperate men do dangerous things." She was right, of course. But Brad wasn't the only one who could be dangerous. I'd spent my career in aerospace calculating risk versus reward, understanding that sometimes you had to push systems to their breaking point to truly test them. Brad thought the beach house was his golden ticket. He had no idea it was actually his trap, fully equipped and waiting. Every camera angle calculated, every security measure tested, every piece of bait perfectly placed. All I needed now was for him to take that final greedy bite. And knowing Brad with his debts mounting and his schemes failing, that moment was coming soon. Tuesday morning, 4 weeks after I'd announced the beach house purchase. I was enjoying my coffee and crossword puzzle when my phone rang at exactly 8:15. Brad's name on the screen made me smile grimly. I'd been expecting this call. I let it ring 3 times before activating my recording app first. "Morning, Brad." "Listen up, old man." His voice was different. Gone was the fake charm, the son-in-law pretense. This was Brad stripped down to his essential self, entitled Demanding Desperate. "I'm done playing games. That beach house, we're using it. This weekend." I set down my coffee cup carefully. "Is that so?" "Yeah, that's so. I've got 17 people coming in from Vegas. High rollers, important connections. We need the house for 3 weeks starting Friday." 3 weeks. I kept my voice mild confused. "Brad, I don't care what you think." He was almost shouting now. "Do you have any idea what you've cost me? I've been telling people about this place, making promises. My reputation's on the line here." "Your reputation?" I couldn't help but chuckle. "Brad, you can't just commandeer." "Commandeer? It's a family property. Sarah's my wife, that makes me family. That house is as much mine as yours." The entitlement was breathtaking. I stayed silent, letting him fill the space with his own noose. "Here's what's going to happen." He continued, his voice taking on what he probably thought was a threatening tone. "You're going to get that house ready. 17 people means we need all the bedrooms set up. Fresh linens, towels, fully stocked bar. Get some good scotch, none of that cheap crap you drink." "Brad, I'm not finished. We need food for 3 weeks. Hire a chef if you have to. Stock the freezers, and make sure the pool's heated. Some of these guys are expecting luxury, and I told them my family delivers." "Anything else?" I asked dryly. "Yeah, stay away while we're there. We don't need you shuffling around embarrassing us. Oh, and give me the gate codes and alarm passwords now so I can send them to my people." I let the silence stretch out, hearing his heavy breathing through the phone. "Brad, I finally said I'm going to have to decline your request." "Did I soon?" "Decline! Decline!" He was fully screaming now. "You don't get to decline. Do you know who these people are? Do you know what they'll do to me if I can't deliver?" Ah, there it was. The fear beneath the anger. Tony Castellano and his associates weren't the forgiving type. "Then perhaps you shouldn't have made promises about property that doesn't belong to you," I suggested. "You sanctimonious old fool, Sarah's going to hear about this. She's going to know exactly what kind of father she has. Selfish, sitting on millions while we struggle." "While you struggle?" I corrected. "Sarah was doing fine before you came along." "Yeah, well, let's see how fine she does when I tell her about your mental episodes. The forgetting, the confusion. Don't think I haven't been documenting everything. One word from me, and she'll be filing for conservatorship so fast." "Be very careful, Brad." I interrupted, my voice dropping to a temperature I hadn't used since dealing with corporate espionage attempts decades ago. "Threats have consequences." "Is that a threat, old man? You threatening me?" He laughed, ugly and sharp. "Here's the reality check. We're coming Friday. All 17 of us. If that house isn't ready, if you've tried to lock us out, I'll make sure everyone knows what a selfish, senile old bastard you are. Sarah will be so disappointed." And if I refuse, then I'll tell Sarah about the house myself. How you've been hiding assets, probably planning to cut her out of the will. How you're showing clear signs of dementia, making reckless financial decisions. She trusts me, Devon. Who do you think she'll believe? I closed my eyes, thinking of my exhausted daughter working herself to death to support this parasite's lifestyle. Oh, and Devon. Brad's voice turned silky with false confidence. Emma's coming too. She's my business partner now. Sarah doesn't need to know about that either, does she? Be a shame if she found out her daddy knew about certain things and didn't tell her. The threat was clear comply, or he'd not only destroy my relationship with Sarah, but blame me for hiding his affair. Classic Brad, turning his own sins into weapons against others. What's the address? He demanded. I need to send it to everyone today. I rattled off the Malibu address, voice steady despite my anger. He made me repeat it twice while he wrote it down. Good. Now the gate code and alarm. I'll handle those when you arrive, I said. No, I don't want any surprises. You'll get them Friday, I insisted. That's the best I can do with such short notice. He cursed creatively for 30 seconds before settling down. Fine. But if you try anything cute, if those gates aren't open when we get there, you'll regret it. Some of these guys I'm bringing, they solve problems in ways you don't want to think about. What time should I expect you? I asked, all business now. We'll be there by 4. Make sure everything's perfect. And Devon, after this weekend we need to talk about making this arrangement permanent. Sarah deserves to enjoy her inheritance while she's young, not wait for you to finally kick off. The line went dead. I set down my phone and picked up my coffee, finding it had gone cold. No matter. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. I immediately called Thomas, my security consultant. It's happening, I said. This Friday, 17 people. I need you on standby. Understood. I'll alert the team. You want full documentation? Everything. Multiple angles, audio enhancement, the works. And law enforcement. On standby only. Let's see how this plays out first. Next, I called Martha and gave her the summary. Her silence spoke volumes. The fool's really going to do it, she finally said. Extortion, elder abuse, criminal threats. He's handing you everything you need. The question is timing, I said. When to spring it. Let him dig the hole deeper, she advised. Give him enough rope. But Devon, be careful. If he's really bringing Castellanos people. Already handled, I assured her. Tom Harrison, the neighbor, remember. The retired FBI agent. Former organized crime unit. I had coffee with him yesterday. Showed him some photos Marcus took of Brad's poker games. He was very interested, especially in a few familiar faces. Martha laughed, sharp and appreciative. You've been busy. Preparation is everything, I said. Now I need to make one more call. The property management company confirmed they could have the house guest ready by Friday, though they expressed surprise at the short notice and large group. I authorized the expense, making sure to document every penny Brad was costing me. That afternoon, I drove to Malibu to personally oversee preparations. The house looked magnificent in the spring sunlight, all glass and clean lines against the ocean backdrop. I spent 2 hours with the property manager going over every detail while secretly checking my security systems. Everything was operational. Cameras recording in high-definition audio, crisp and clear, all controls responding perfectly to my phone app. I made sure the panic room was stocked with water and basic supplies, though I didn't expect to need it. This was Brad's show. I was just the director. On my way home, I stopped at Sarah's office. She was buried in briefs, hair pulled back in a messy bun, empty coffee cups creating a fortress around her desk. Dad. She looked up, surprised. What brings you here? Just wanted to see my daughter, I said, settling into her client chair. You look tired. She rubbed her eyes. Big case. Sherman Industries versus their insurance company. $40 million at stake. Proud of you, I said simply. Your mother would be too. Her face softened. Thanks, Dad. I needed to hear that. Things have been tough lately. Anything you want to talk about? She glanced at her door, then shook her head. Just the usual stress. Brad's between ventures again, money's tight. You know how it is. I wanted to tell her everything then. About the credit cards in her name, the affair with Emma, the threats her husband had made just hours ago. But I held back. Sarah needed to see the truth for herself, not have it forced on her by her father. By the way, she said, trying for casual. Brad mentioned you might be having some people over to the beach house this weekend. So he'd already started laying groundwork testing what she knew. He mentioned wanting to visit, I said carefully. Still working out details? That's great. She looked relieved. He's been so excited about seeing it. Maybe we could all go together. I could use a beach weekend. My heart ached for her, so trusting, so unaware of what was coming. We'll see how it develops, I said. You focus on your case. Everything else will work itself out. I left her office feeling the weight of what was coming. In 4 days, her world would shatter. But better a clean break than the slow poisoning Brad had planned. Sometimes a father's love means letting your child face hard truths. That evening, I made final preparations. Contacted my lawyer to review California's recording laws, confirmed the legality of recording in my own home. Called my bank to flag any unusual activity on my accounts. Sent Martha copies of all documentation for safekeeping. Brad thought he was bringing 17 people to intimidate an old man into compliance. Instead, he was walking 17 witnesses into the most thoroughly documented self-destruction in California history. Every threat, every crime, every moment of his true nature would be preserved in crystal-clear digital permanence. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror that night. 68 years old, gray-haired lines earned from decades of problems solved and challenges met. Brad saw an easy mark, a declining old fool to be pushed aside. He was about to learn why aerospace engineers test everything to destruction. Sometimes to save the mission, you have to let the faulty component fail catastrophically. Friday couldn't come soon enough. Friday arrived with unusual June gloom, the marine layer thick enough to muffle sound, and cast everything in gray softness. I'd been at the Malibu house since dawn, ostensibly making final preparations, but really ensuring all my recording equipment was functioning perfectly. At 10 that morning, I met with the security guard I'd hired, Officer Daniel Reeves, moonlighting from the Malibu Sheriff's Station. 6'3", built like a linebacker, with the calm professionalism that came from 20 years in law enforcement. 17 potentially hostile individuals. I briefed him, showing him photos Marcus had taken. Several with criminal connections. They're expecting unlimited access, but they're not getting it. Understood, Mr. Devon, and your safety. I'll be in the house initially, then leaving. All interactions should be recorded by the security system. And if things escalate, call for backup immediately. These aren't just party guests. Some are dangerous when cornered. By 3:30, I was in the main house watching the ocean and waiting. The property management company had done excellent work. The house gleamed fully stocked as requested. I'd even had them add fresh flowers, wanting everything to appear perfect for the cameras. At 3:45, Tom Harrison called from next door. Devon, you've got incoming. Convoy of cars moving fast. That Brad of yours is in the lead Mercedes. How many vehicles? I count 6. Expensive cars, tinted windows. Few of these plates are familiar from my working days. Appreciated, Tom. You might want to stay inside for a bit. Are you kidding? I've got my binoculars and scanner ready. This is the most excitement I've had since retirement. I positioned myself in the living room, tablet in hand, showing all camera feeds. The gate camera caught them first, Brad's rented Mercedes, leading a parade of luxury vehicles. I could see him through the windshield, gesturing animatedly, probably bragging about his beach house. They pulled up to the gate, and Brad jumped out, strutting over to the call box with the confidence of ownership. He jabbed at the buttons, then frowned when nothing happened. "Open the damn gate, Devon!" he shouted into the intercom. "We're here!" I let him stew for 30 seconds before responding through the app. "Good afternoon, Brad. I see you brought friends. 17, just like I said. Now open up. The guys are eager to see the place. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, I said calmly. I never agreed to this gathering. Even through the security camera, I could see his face redden. We discussed this. You gave me the address. You demanded and threatened. That's not a discussion. The property isn't available for your use. Car doors started opening. Men in expensive suits climbed out, looking annoyed. I recognized Tony Castellano from Marcus's surveillance photos, mid-50s silver at the temples, $1,000 shoes and eyes like a shark. What's the holdup, Morrison? Castellano's voice carried clearly to the gate microphone. Just a minor confusion, Tony. Brad said, panic creeping into his tone. My father-in-law's being difficult. You said this was arranged. Castellano moved closer, and I noted how the other men subtly deferred to him. I don't like driving 2 hours for nothing. It is arranged. Brad turned back to the intercom. Devin, stop playing games. You know what's at stake here? Yes, I replied. I know exactly what's at stake, which is why you're not entering my property. More men had gathered behind Brad now. Some looked like typical Vegas high rollers, gold chains, and pinky rings. Others had the watchful stance of bodyguards. One younger man was holding what appeared to be a professional video camera. Is that a reality TV crew? I asked through the intercom. Brad's grin was forced. Yeah, Chet's producer friend. Thought we'd film some content, lifestyle stuff. Great promotion for the house value. Absolutely not. Listen, you senile old... Brad caught himself glancing at his audience. Devin, please, be reasonable. That's when I noticed another car pulling up a white BMW convertible. My stomach dropped as I recognized Sarah's car. This wasn't part of the plan. She got out looking confused, still in her work clothes. Brad, what's going on? Why are all these people here? Baby. Brad's voice went up an octave. What are you doing here? You texted me there was a family emergency at Dad's beach house, she said, approaching the gate. Dad, are you okay? Through the camera, I could see her taking in the scene, the convoy of luxury cars, the group of strange men, the camera crew. Her lawyer's instincts were kicking in. I'm fine, sweetheart, I said through the intercom. Brad arranged a party without permission. I've asked them to leave. A party? She turned to Brad. You said Dad invited us for the weekend. That's when the BMW's passenger door opened and Emma Richardson stepped out. Tall blonde, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's rent. She moved to Brad's side with practiced familiarity. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Who's this? Business associate, Brad said quickly. Emma's helping with the new venture. Listen, Sarah, why don't you head home? This is just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that required 17 people and a camera crew. Sarah's voice could have frosted glass. Castellano stepped forward. Mrs. Morrison, your husband owes me $40,000. He promised this weekend would square things up. Now I'm hearing your father won't honor the arrangement. Sarah went very still. $40,000, Brad. It's not what you think. Brad started, but Emma chose that moment to possessively touch his arm. Bradley, just handle this, she purred. You promised me a weekend in Malibu. The look on Sarah's face would have broken my heart if I hadn't been documenting everything. This was the moment she needed the truth delivered by the guilty parties themselves. Dad, Sarah said quietly. Please let me in. Just me. I activated the pedestrian gate. Sarah slipped through, leaving Brad sputtering protests. As she passed Officer Reeves, she nodded politely, professional recognizing professional. Behind her, the crowd was getting restless. Some men were examining the gate, testing its strength. Others were on phones, voices carrying threats about wasted time and broken promises. You've got 30 seconds, Morrison, Castellano announced, before this becomes a real problem. Devin. Brad screamed at the intercom. You're destroying everything, Sarah. Tell him, make him see reason. but Sarah had already disappeared into the house. I met her at the door, and she fell into my arms, shaking. $40,000, Dad, who are these people and that woman? I think you already know, I said gently. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. You knew. She pulled back, searching my face. How long? Long enough, but you needed to see it for yourself. Through the window, we could watch the drama unfolding at the gate. Brad was in full panic mode, gesturing wildly, making promises he couldn't keep. The camera crew was filming everything, sensing a different kind of content than they'd expected. That's when Brad made his critical mistake. Fine, he shouted, pulling something from his pocket. I've got a crowbar in the car. We'll force it open. It's community property anyway, since I'm married to his daughter. Brad knew someone warned, but he was beyond listening. He returned with the crowbar and started attacking the gate mechanism. Officer Reeves stepped into view, hand resting on his radio. Sir, I'm going to need you to step back from the gate. You're attempting to break and enter. Get lost, rent-a-cop. Brad swung the crowbar again. This is family business. Sir, this is your last warning. Brad's response was to swing the crowbar at Reeves when he got too close. It was a glancing blow, but enough. Reeves had him on the ground and in cuffs within seconds while calling for backup on his radio. The crowd scattered like roaches when light hits them. Engines roared to life as luxury cars peeled out, leaving Brad face down on the pavement with Emma shrieking about police brutality. Sarah watched it all through the window, tears streaming down her face. He hit a police officer. My husband just assaulted a police officer. While attempting breaking and entering, I added, in front of witnesses and cameras. Cameras. She looked at me sharply, the lawyer returning. Dad, what did you do? I protected myself, I said simply, and documented everything. Brad's been planning to have me declared incompetent, Sarah. He's been recording me building a case meeting with lawyers about taking control of my assets. Her face went white. What? There's more. The credit cards in your name, the affair with Emma, the illegal gambling. It's all documented. I have recordings, photos, financial records. She sank onto the couch, looking smaller than I'd seen her since she was 10 and had broken her mother's favorite vase. How long? She whispered. Months. But I needed him to show his true colors without my interference. You wouldn't have believed me otherwise. Through the window, we could see backup arriving. Real Malibu sheriff's deputies who took one look at the scene and started taking statements. Emma was gesticulating wildly, but whatever story she was spinning wasn't working. The reality TV camera was still rolling, capturing Brad being loaded into a patrol car. Tom Harrison appeared at my back door grinning like Christmas had come early. Devin, that was better than anything I saw in 20 years with the Bureau. You should have seen Castellano's face when the black and whites showed up. Haven't seen him move that fast since the Torino indictment. I introduced him to Sarah, who was trying to compose herself. Your father's quite the strategist, Tom told her. Reminded me why Bureau loved engineers. You folks think 10 steps ahead. My phone buzzed with messages from Martha, who'd been monitoring police scanners. Brad's being booked for assault on a peace officer attempted B&E and they found substances in his car. Idiot gave them probable cause. Sarah stood abruptly. I need to call my office and a divorce attorney and… She stopped, overwhelmed. One step at a time, I said. First, let me show you something. I led her to my hidden control room, revealing the security setup. Her eyes widened as she took in the monitors, the recording equipment, the files of evidence neatly organized. This is why you bought the house, she said. Not for retirement, for evidence. For truth, I corrected. You deserve to know who you married. She was quiet for a long moment, studying footage of Brad recorded over the past weeks. His real self, unfiltered and undisguised. The $40,000 to Castellano, she said finally. If Brad can't pay… Already handled, I assured her. Made Castellano whole through intermediaries this morning. He has no claim on you or our family. Brad's debt was Brad's alone. You paid $40,000 to protect me from my own husband's gambling debts. I'd pay $40 million to protect you, I said simply. You're all I have left of your mother. That broke her composure. She sobbed against my shoulder while sirens wailed in the distance, and her world reorganized itself around new truths. But I could feel something else in her embrace. Relief. The exhausting weight of carrying Brad's failures had finally lifted. She was free even if she didn't fully realize it yet. Outside the marine layer was lifting, revealing the endless blue Pacific. The sun would set soon, painting the sky in colors Mary had loved. And for the first time in years, I felt her approval warming me like that fading light. Brad had thought the beach house was his prize. Instead, it had become his confession booth, his courtroom, his cell. Every threat recorded, every crime documented, every lie exposed. The engineer in me appreciated the elegant solution. The father in me just held his daughter while she grieved the death of illusions and began the journey toward something real. The next 72 hours unfolded like a Shakespearean tragedy if Shakespeare had written about entitled con men and their spectacular self-destruction. Saturday morning brought the first aftershocks. I was making breakfast for Sarah, who'd stayed in the beach house guest room, when Martha called. "You need to see what's trending on social media," she said without preamble. I opened my laptop while Sarah nursed her coffee. The video was everywhere. Entitled man's Malibu meltdown goes viral. Brad attacking the gate with a crowbar, screaming about his rights, then assaulting Officer Reeves. The reality TV crew had immediately sold the footage to TMZ. 3 million views already, Martha reported. The comment section is particularly brutal. Sarah watched with the detached expression she used in court. "He's finished. No one in Los Angeles will work with him after this." But Brad's public humiliation was just the beginning. My phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Mr. Hartley, this is Agent Patricia Chen from the FBI's Los Angeles office. I believe you know my former colleague, Tom Harrison. My neighbor had made his calls. What can I do for you, Agent Chen? We've been investigating illegal gambling operations in the Los Angeles area. Last night's incident provided some interesting connections. We'd like to discuss what you might know about Bradley Morrison's activities." I glanced at Sarah, who nodded firmly. The lawyer in her recognized the opportunity. "We'd be happy to cooperate," I said. "I have substantial documentation you might find interesting." We arranged to meet Monday morning. Sarah immediately went into attorney mode, organizing my evidence files and preparing a timeline. It was good to see her focused on something other than pain. The weekend brought more revelations. Marcus, my private investigator, called with urgent news. Devin Brad made bail. But here's the interesting part, it wasn't Sarah who bailed him out. It was Emma Richardson's husband. Her husband, Richard Richardson. Apparently he found out about the affair thanks to the viral video. He bailed Brad out specifically to serve him with papers. Not just divorce from Emma, but a civil suit for alienation of affection. He's claiming damages of $2 million. Sarah laughed bitterly. Brad doesn't have $2,000, much less $2 million. That's not all, Marcus continued. Richardson owns several businesses. He's putting the word out anyone who does business with Brad Morrison will lose all Richardson contracts. In this town, that's a death sentence. By Sunday afternoon, Brad's world was collapsing at impressive speed. The illegal gambling revelation had triggered an avalanche. 3 of his former business partners came forward with fraud complaints. A country club revoked his membership for unpaid dues. Even the Mercedes dealership repossessed his rental for violating the terms of use. Sarah spent the day on the phone with financial institutions, freezing accounts, and canceling the credit cards Brad had opened in her name. Each call revealed new debts, new lies, new betrayals. $470,000, she said, finally setting down her legal pad. That's what he owes, not counting the mortgage payments he hasn't made in 3 months. Mortgage payments. I sat up straighter. Sarah, you've been paying the mortgage. Her laugh was hollow. I thought I was. He's been taking the money and gambling with it. We're in foreclosure, Dad. Have been for 2 months. I wanted to rage at the man who'd done this to my daughter, but anger wouldn't help now. We'll handle it. First thing Monday, we'll see your bank. That evening, while Sarah showered, I got another call. Brad from a number I didn't recognize. You destroyed me, he said without greeting, voice raw. You planned all this. You destroyed yourself, I corrected. I just made sure there were cameras rolling when you did it. You don't understand what you've done. These people I owe money to, they don't care about viral videos or FBI investigations. They want their money. Should have thought of that before you gambled it away. Sarah won't be safe, he pressed on. They know she's got access to family money. They'll come after her to get to you. Is that a threat, Brad? It's reality. You think you're so smart with your cameras and your security guards. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Actually, I do. I kept my voice calm. Anthony Castellano received full payment of your debt as of Friday morning. Wire transfer from an anonymous benefactor. He has no claim on this family. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. You paid my debt, his voice cracked. I protected my daughter. You were just a toxic asset that needed removing from the portfolio. I'll contest the divorce, he said desperately. California's a community property state. I'll get half of everything Sarah has. With what lawyer? I asked. Who's going to represent a viral sensation with federal charges pending and no money to pay? I'll tell everyone about your schemes, how you set me up. Please do. I'm sure the FBI will be fascinated to hear how a 70-year-old retiree masterminded your decision to assault a police officer. He cursed steadily for 30 seconds before I interrupted. Brad, listen carefully. You're going to sign whatever divorce papers Sarah's attorney prepares. You're going to walk away quietly. In exchange, I won't pursue criminal charges for the recording devices you planted in my home. You can't prove that was me. Your fingerprints are on them. I had them checked. One more felony charge, Brad. How many can you juggle? Monday morning arrived with marine fog and federal agents. Sarah and I met with Agent Chen and her team in a conference room that screamed government efficiency. Mr. Hartley. Agent Chen began after introductions. What you've documented here is extensive. Mr. Morrison's gambling operation touches on several ongoing investigations. I laid out everything: the high-stakes games, the money laundering through failed businesses, the connections to Vegas crime families. Sarah supplemented with financial records showing the money trails. This is exceptional work, Agent Chen said, reviewing the files. Almost like you've done this before. I spent 30 years in aerospace, I replied. Documentation is second nature. What happens to Brad? Sarah asked quietly. Agent Chen's expression was sympathetic but firm. Based on this evidence and his existing charges, Mr. Morrison is looking at significant federal time, 5 to 7 years minimum. Sarah nodded, accepting the reality of who she'd married. That afternoon, while Sarah met with her divorce attorney, I handled one final piece of business. Brad's parents lived in Riverside, decent people who'd always been kind to Sarah. I called them. Mr. Hartley. Brad's mother, Dorothy, sounded tired. We saw the news. I'm sorry you had to find out that way. We've known Bradley had problems for years, she admitted. But we kept hoping. Is Sarah all right? She will be. I'm calling because I want you to know this isn't about punishing your family. It's about protecting mine. We understand, Dorothy's voice was thick with unshed tears. We failed him somehow, always making excuses, always enabling. Maybe if we'd been firmer. Don't blame yourselves, Brad made his choices. Will you tell Sarah we love her, that she'll always be welcome here? I will. Tuesday brought the final revelation. Emma Richardson, facing her own divorce and social exile, decided if she was going down, Brad was going with her. She sold her story to a gossip blog complete with text messages and photos documenting their affair. But the real bombshell was her claim that Brad had bragged about planning to have his father-in-law declared incompetent. She had recordings of Brad describing his scheme in detail, laughing about how he'd milk the old fool for millions. The story exploded across Los Angeles. Brad Morrison became the poster child for entitled grifters, his face a meme for greed and stupidity. Someone created a drinking game based on his viral video. Late-night comics made jokes about pulling a Morrison. Wednesday morning, Sarah and I sat in the beach house watching the sunrise paint the ocean gold. The divorce papers were filed, the house saved from foreclosure, her credit beginning to recover. "I'm sorry," I said finally, "for not telling you sooner." "No," she said firmly. "You were right. I needed to see it myself. If you'd just told me, I would have defended him, made excuses, maybe even blamed you." "Still watching your marriage end?" "It ended long before last Friday," she interrupted. "I just didn't want to admit it. I was so tired, Dad. So tired of carrying him, making excuses, pretending things would get better." "What now?" She smiled, the first real smile I'd seen in years. "Now I rebuild. My career, my finances, my life. Without a parasite draining me dry. I'm proud of you." "Mom would have handled it better," Sarah said wistfully. "She would have seen through Brad immediately." "Your mother married me," I reminded her. "A nerdy engineer with big dreams and empty pockets. She took her own chances on love. But you were worth the risk." "She made me worth it," I corrected. "The right partner elevates you. Brad only knew how to diminish." That afternoon, Tom Harrison stopped by with an update. Several of Brad's gambling associates had been arrested in the federal sweep. The illegal operation was unraveling, taking down corrupt cops and money launderers. "Your son-in-law is singing like a canary," Tom reported with satisfaction. "Trading information for reduced sentences, though given how many people he's burned, prison might be the safest place for him." Sarah returned to work Thursday, walking into her firm with her head high, despite the whispers. Her managing partner called her in not to condemn, but to offer support. The firm had seen the documentation, understood she was a victim, not a participant. By Friday, exactly 1 week after Brad's spectacular self-destruction life had found a new rhythm, Sarah moved back to her childhood room temporarily while hunting for apartments. We established new routines, morning coffee together, evening walks on the beach, rebuilding the father-daughter bond Brad had tried to poison. The beach house purchased as a trap became something else entirely, a place of healing, of new beginnings. Sarah would stand on the deck, breathing ocean air, looking stronger each day. "You know what's funny?" she said one evening watching the sunset. "Brad wanted this house so badly, but he never would have appreciated it. He'd only have seen dollar signs, not beauty. That's the difference between earning something and feeling entitled to it," I observed. "Dad, thank you. For everything. For protecting me even when I couldn't see the danger." "Always," I promised. "That's what fathers do." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I thought about the engineer's approach to problem solving. Identify the flaw, document the failure, remove the defective component, rebuild stronger. Brad Morrison had been a critical failure in the system of our family. Now with him removed, we could rebuild, stronger, wiser, and infinitely more careful about who we let past our gates. The ocean waves continued their eternal rhythm, washing away footprints and leaving clean sand. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, we had peace. And that was enough. 1 year later, almost to the day, I stood in the same spot where Brad had wielded his crowbar in rage. The gate was unchanged, but everything else in our lives had transformed completely. The morning sun cast long shadows across the driveway as I waited for Sarah to arrive. She'd texted saying she had news that needed to be shared in person at the place where everything had changed. A blue Tesla pulled up to the gate, and my daughter stepped out looking radiant. Gone was the exhausted, worn-down woman who'd discovered her husband's betrayal. This Sarah stood tall, confident, wearing success like armor. "Dad!" She hugged me tight, then pulled back with a grin. I have so much to tell you. We walked to the deck, settling into the chairs we'd added over the months. The ocean sparkled endlessly, indifferent to human dramas, but somehow comforting in its constancy. First, Sarah began, the verdict came in yesterday. Brad got 6 years federal time with possibility of parole in 4. His lawyer tried for minimum security, but with the assault charge and the FBI testimony. Maximum security, I guessed. Medium. Could have been worse, but he cooperated fully with the gambling investigation. I nodded, feeling no satisfaction, just relief. And the civil suits? The Richardsons dropped theirs once they realized Brad had no assets. The fraud victims are pursuing restitution through criminal court. She paused. His parents visited me last week. That surprised me. Dorothy and Harold. They wanted to apologize again. They're selling their house to pay back some of the people Brad cheated. They didn't have to legally, but Dorothy said they couldn't live with the shame otherwise. Good people, I murmured. Wrong son. Speaking of sons. Sarah's expression shifted to something softer. Remember Dr. James Winters? I thought back. The pediatrician from the hospital charity board. We've been dating for 6 months, she said in a rush. I wanted to be sure before I told you. James is everything Brad wasn't. Kind, honest, dedicated to helping children. He makes me laugh, Dad. Really laugh. 6 months, I pretended offense. And I'm just hearing about this. I needed time, she said simply, to heal, to trust my judgment again. But James is patient. He understands what I went through. His first wife was an addict who embezzled from his practice. We bonded over our spectacular taste in spouses. I laughed despite myself. When do I get to meet him officially, I mean? Sunday dinner, if you're willing. I know bringing another man to meet you after Brad. Sarah. I interrupted gently. I trust your judgment. You've earned that trust back with interest. She beamed, then grew serious again. There's more news. The partnership vote was yesterday. I held my breath. Sarah had been working toward partnership since law school, but Brad's drama had threatened everything. I made it, she whispered then, louder. I made partner youngest woman in the firm's history to reach that level. I pulled her into another hug, feeling Mary's presence strongly. Our daughter had survived, had thrived, had refused to let Brad's poison define her future. There's one more thing, Sarah said when we separated. The beach house. What about it? I know you bought it as evidence, not as a real home. Now that everything's settled, are you planning to sell? I looked around the property that had served its purpose so well. I hadn't decided. Why? Because I have a proposition, she said, pulling out her phone. James and I have been talking. He works at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, sees families destroyed by medical bills, parents sleeping in their cars because they can't afford hotels while their kids get treatment. She showed me a presentation on her phone. The Morrison Beach House Foundation. We convert this place into a free retreat for families with children in long-term treatment. Give them a week of peace, of beauty, of healing. My throat tightened. You want to turn Brad's trap into something good. Into something Mom would have loved, Sarah corrected. She always said the best revenge against cruelty is radical kindness. The Morrison Foundation, I questioned. Won't that name? Let it, Sarah said firmly. Let something good come from that name. Besides, she smiled wickedly. Imagine Brad finding out his name is attached to a charity helping others. It'll kill him. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. Mary would have loved the irony. Yes, let's do it. The house is yours. We spent the next hour planning. Sarah had thought through everything: corporate structure, tax benefits, partnerships with the hospital. The lawyer in her had emerged stronger than ever. As noon approached, we moved inside to escape the heat. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, as if it too understood its purpose had evolved. Dad. Sarah said suddenly, "I need to tell you something else. About that day when Brad brought everyone here." I waited, seeing her gather courage. "I knew," she said quietly. "About Emma, I mean. I'd known for months. Found hotel receipts, smelled her perfume. I was too tired to confront it. Too scared of starting over." "Oh, sweetheart." "But watching him that day, seeing him bring her to our family place, seeing how he talked to you." She shook her head. "That's when I realized I wasn't tired anymore. I was angry. Furiously, brilliantly angry. And that anger saved me." "Anger can be fuel," I agreed, "when properly channeled." "You taught me that," she said. "Not with words, but with actions. You could have destroyed Brad months earlier, but you waited. You channeled your anger into strategy." "Engineering approach," I said modestly. "Dad approach," she corrected. "You let me find my own strength instead of imposing yours." A text chimed on her phone. She glanced at it and smiled. "James. He's asking if you prefer fish or steak for Sunday dinner. He wants to cook for you. A man who cooks already an improvement over Brad." "A man who saves children's lives," Sarah corrected. "Who volunteers at free clinics, who drives a 5-year-old Prius because he'd rather donate money than spend it on status symbols." "Shostam. Fish," I decided. "And tell him I'm looking forward to it." As Sarah texted back, I walked to the window where we'd watched Brad's arrest. The spot held no ghosts, no lingering darkness, just glass and light and endless ocean. "There's something I never told you," I said. "The morning Brad called with his demands, I was ready to give in, to let him have the house for 3 weeks just to keep the peace." Sarah looked shocked. "What changed your mind?" "He threatened you," I said simply. "Said he'd make you choose between him and me. That's when I knew he had to be stopped, not appeased." "He never understood family," Sarah mused. "Real family doesn't make you choose. They help you see." Martha arrived for lunch, bringing champagne to celebrate Sarah's partnership. Tom Harrison joined us, regaling Sarah with stories from his FBI days that somehow all related back to entitled criminals getting their comeuppance. "Your father could have been an agent," Tom declared, after his second glass. "The patience, the planning, the psychological warfare. Textbook operation. Except I had personal stakes," I reminded him. "Makes everything harder." "Makes everything matter," Tom corrected. As afternoon faded to evening, our small celebration wound down. Martha left first, then Tom, until it was just Sarah and me again. We stood on the deck, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. "I should go," Sarah said reluctantly. "James is making dinner and I want to help." "Cooking together," I observed. "Another good sign." She hugged me one more time. "I love you, Dad. Thank you for waiting for me to catch up." After she left, I remained on the deck as colors painted the sky. Pink to orange to purple, the whole spectrum of endings and beginnings. Somewhere in federal prison, Brad Morrison was learning the price of entitlement. Somewhere in Los Angeles, families with sick children would soon have a place of respite. The ocean continued its eternal dance waves, marking time better than any clock. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo of Mary I always carried. She smiled back, frozen in time, but somehow still present. "We did it, love," I whispered to the photo. "We saved her." A dolphin broke the surface beyond the breakers, then another, a whole pod heading north. Signs of life, of continuity, of nature's indifference to human drama, and nature's gift of always moving forward. Tomorrow the beach house would begin its transformation from trap to sanctuary. Sarah would continue building her new life with a man who understood the value of earning rather than taking. And I would keep my weekly dinners, my morning crosswords, my quiet life that Brad had so catastrophically underestimated. But tonight I simply stood witness to another Pacific sunset, grateful for the strange journey that had led us here. Every betrayal had taught us loyalty. Every lie had reinforced the value of truth. Every moment of Brad's greed had illuminated the wealth of simply being a family that protects its own. The sun touched the horizon, that daily miracle we take for granted until someone tries to steal our ability to see it. I thought of all the families who would stand on this deck in years to come, finding peace in the midst of crisis hope, in the face of illness. Brad had demanded entry to this house, seeing only property to exploit. Instead, his downfall had created something he could never understand, a legacy of kindness born from cruelty, generosity rising from greed. As the last sliver of sun vanished, I made my way inside. There was dinner to prepare, calls to make a future to build on the ashes of other people's entitlement. The engineer in me appreciated the symmetry. The father in me was simply grateful. Life I'd learned wasn't about the hand you're dealt, but how you play it. Brad had overplayed his hand spectacularly. Sarah had folded when necessary, then come back stronger. And I'd simply waited for the right moment to show my cards. The house settled into evening quiet, ready for its next chapter. No more traps, no more surveillance, no more need for protective strategies. Just walls that would shelter the weary, and views that would remind them that beauty persists even in the darkest times. Brad Morrison thought he could barge into my home with his friends. Instead, he'd opened the door for countless families who actually needed what this place could offer. In the end, that wasn't just a lesson. It was perfect justice. Looking back now, I often wonder what would have happened if I'd handled things differently. What if I'd confronted Brad immediately when I discovered his recording devices? What if I'd warned Sarah about the credit cards? The affairs, the gambling, would she have believed me? Or would Brad's silver tongue have convinced her that her father was the real problem? Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is the space to see the truth for themselves, even when that truth comes with pain. Sarah emerged from her marriage to Brad, not just divorced, but transformed. The woman who made partner, who chose a good man like James, who turned a house bought for revenge into a sanctuary for suffering families, that woman was forged in the fire of betrayal and discovered her own strength in the ashes. If you've stayed with me through this long story, I have to ask, have you ever had someone in your life who mistook your kindness for weakness? How did you handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about life's unexpected turns and the strength we find when pushed too far. Share this with someone who needs to remember that patience isn't weakness, it's power, waiting for the right moment. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you always have the wisdom to know when to be patient and when to act, the strength to protect those you love, and the grace to transform your worst experiences into something beautiful. Until next time, remember, the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you. It's building something so good from the rubble that their actions become the foundation of someone else's hope. Take care, and remember you're stronger than you know.